Bruce Freeman's life changed forever when he inherited the Norcadian king's ugly daughter through a will. The human diplomat sat rigid in his seat, surrounded by the mocking laughter of the Galactic Council as they jeered at his predicament. Moments ago, the annual assembly had been progressing as usual. Representatives from countless alien races filled the grand chamber, their varied forms a testament to the diversity of sentient life in the cosmos. Bruce, Earth's chosen envoy, had been attentively following the proceedings when chaos erupted. King Zaxos of the Norcadian Empire, a venerable figure known for his shrewd political maneuvering, collapsed mid-speech. The chamber fell silent as medical personnel rushed to his aid, but their efforts proved futile. The king was declared dead on the council floor. Before the shock could settle, a Norcadian official produced a glowing data crystal, the king's final will and testament. The council listened in stunned silence as the document was read aloud, revealing that Bruce Freeman had been named the sole heir to the Norcadian throne. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembly. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, barely a century into their interstellar explorations. For one of them to inherit control of the Norcadian Empire, with its crucial hyperlane routes and rare mineral deposits, was unprecedented. But the true bombshell came next. As part of his inheritance, Bruce was to take Princess Janus, the king's daughter, as his mate. A holographic image flickered to life, displaying the princess in all her glory. The laughter began immediately. To Norcadian eyes, and indeed to most species present, Princess Janus was the epitome of ugliness. Her smooth skin lacked the beautiful tentacles that adorned most Norcadians. Her bipedal form was considered grotesquely simplistic compared to the elegant, multi-limbed bodies of her people. Bruce's mind raced. The political implications of this inheritance were staggering. Earth's growing interstellar presence had been hampered by limited access to key resources and trade routes, resources the Norcadian Empire controlled in abundance. Accepting this inheritance could secure humanity's position in the galactic community for generations to come. But at what personal cost? The council members, still chuckling, informed Bruce that Norcadian law required an immediate decision. A smooth transition of power was essential to prevent civil unrest. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on Bruce's shoulders as he weighed his options. With a deep breath, Bruce stood. The chamber fell silent, all eyes fixed on the human, as he spoke the words that would change the course of galactic history. I accept the inheritance and my role as king of the Norcadians. Disbelief replaced amusement on the faces of the council members. They watched, stunned, as Bruce was officially crowned and introduced to Princess Janus in person. The princess, terrified of Bruce's alien appearance, recoiled from his touch during the ceremonial greeting. As Bruce gazed at his new bride and the incredulous faces of his new subjects, he began formulating a plan. This disaster could be turned to humanity's advantage, but it would require all of his diplomatic skills and then some. Unbeknownst to the newly crowned king, rival alien factions within the Galactic Council were already plotting. They saw Bruce's ascension as an opportunity to undermine both human and Norcadian influence. As Bruce contemplated his next move, political machinations were set in motion that threatened to destabilize the entire region. The stage was set for a battle of wits, culture, and political intrigue. Bruce Freeman, accidental king of an alien empire, would need every ounce of human ingenuity to navigate the treacherous waters ahead. The fate of two species now rested in his hands. As the newly crowned king of the Norcadians made his way through the winding corridors of the royal palace, Bruce Freeman's mind raced with the implications of his sudden ascension. The weight of the ornate crown upon his brow served as a constant reminder of the responsibility he now bore. His reverie was interrupted by the approach of a group of Norcadian elders, their tentacles undulating with barely concealed agitation. The lead elder, his skin a mottled purple, fixed Bruce with all four of his eyes. "Your Majesty," the elder's voice rasped through a translator, "there is an urgent matter we must discuss." Bruce nodded, steeling himself. "Of course, Elder." "Zixtal," the elder supplied. "As per Norcadian law, you must consummate your marriage with Princess Janus immediately to solidify your claim to the throne." Bruce's stomach lurched. He had known this moment would come, but he hadn't expected it so soon. "I see," he managed, fighting to keep his voice steady. "And where is the princess now?" "She awaits you in the royal bedchamber," Zixtal replied, gesturing down a nearby hallway with one of his upper tentacles. Swallowing hard, Bruce followed the elder's directions. He found himself before an imposing door made of some iridescent material that seemed to shift colors as he watched. Taking a deep breath, he pressed his palm to the sensor panel, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. The royal bedchamber was unlike anything Bruce had ever seen. Instead of a bed, a large gelatinous pod filled with a viscous, shimmering fluid dominated the center of the room. Various alien apparatuses lined the walls, their purposes a mystery to the human king. Princess Janus stood in the far corner, her tentacles coiled tightly around her body in a clear display of discomfort. Her eyes, all 6 of them, darted nervously between Bruce and the door. Bruce took a cautious step forward, and Janus flinched. He stopped, realizing that his alien appearance frightened her as much as hers unsettled him. This called for a different approach. "Everyone out," Bruce commanded, turning to the attendants and council members who had followed him into the room. "I wish to speak with the princess alone." There was a moment of hesitation before the Norcadians complied, leaving Bruce and Janus in tense silence. "Princess Janus," Bruce began, keeping his voice soft and even, "I know this situation is unusual for both of us. I'd like to explain some things about humans, if you're willing to listen." Janus's tentacles loosened slightly, a flicker of curiosity passing through her eyes. She gave a small nod. Over the next hour, Bruce patiently explained human biology, customs, and social norms. He described Earth's varied ecosystems, its diverse cultures, and humanity's brief but eventful history of space exploration. As he spoke, Janus gradually relaxed, her scientific curiosity overcoming her initial fear. "And this is how humans greet each other formally," Bruce said, extending his hand. "It's called a handshake. Would you like to try?" Janus hesitated, then slowly extended one of her tentacles. Bruce gently grasped it, demonstrating the gesture. A visible shiver ran through Janus's body at the contact. "Your skin," she said, her translator struggling to convey the wonder in her voice. "It's not unpleasant." Emboldened by this small victory, Janus began to ask questions about human anatomy and mating practices. Bruce answered as best he could, grateful for the cultural sensitivity training he'd received as a diplomat. As their conversation continued, neither Bruce nor Janus noticed the small drone hovering near the ceiling, its camera focused intently on their interaction. Several floors below, in a dimly lit chamber, Lord Xylox watched the feed from the drone with growing frustration. The tentacled noble had hoped to catch the human king in a compromising position, something he could use to challenge Bruce's claim to the throne. Instead, he was witnessing what appeared to be a remarkably effective first contact scenario. "This will not do," Xylox muttered, his tentacles writhing in agitation. He turned to his assembled co-conspirators. "We must find another way to discredit this human. Spread the word among the populace. Let them know their empire has fallen into the hands of an alien usurper." As Xylox's agents slipped out into the night, the first whispers of discontent began to spread through the Norcadian capital. By dawn, those whispers had grown into shouts of protest in several major cities across the empire. Bruce, unaware of the growing unrest, awoke to find himself alone in the gelatinous pod. Despite its alien nature, he had found it surprisingly comfortable. As he oriented himself, a holographic display flickered to life beside him, showing the face of a human woman he recognized as Earth's Secretary of Interstellar Affairs. "King Freeman," she said, her tone a mix of respect and urgency, "we've been briefed on your situation. A team of advisors and diplomats is en route to assist you. In the meantime, we strongly advise you to—" The transmission cut off abruptly as the door to the royal chamber burst open. Elder Zixtal rushed in, his usually composed demeanor shattered. "Your Majesty," he gasped, "you must address the people immediately. Riots have broken out across the Empire. They're calling for your removal." Bruce's mind raced as he climbed out of the pod. He had known his position would be precarious, but he hadn't expected challenges to arise so quickly. As he hurriedly donned the royal attire provided for him, Bruce realized that the true test of his diplomatic skills was about to begin. The fate of two species now hung in the balance, and Bruce Freeman, the accidental king of an alien empire, had mere minutes to prepare for the most important speech of his life. Bruce took a deep breath, his mind racing as he processed Elder Zixtal's urgent news. The weight of the crown seemed to double as he realized the true magnitude of the challenge before him. With a nod to the elder, Bruce strode purposefully towards the balcony, overlooking the grand courtyard of the royal palace. As he emerged into the early morning light, Bruce was struck by the alien beauty of the Norcadian capital. Towering spires of iridescent crystal reached towards the pink-tinged sky, while hovering vehicles zipped between them in intricate patterns. The sight momentarily distracted him from the growing crowd below, their tentacles writhing in agitation. Bruce gripped the railing, his nucleus tightening as he surveyed the sea of unfamiliar faces. The murmur of the crowd grew louder as they noticed his presence, a mix of curiosity and hostility evident in their multiple eyes. "Your Majesty," Zixtal whispered urgently, "you must address them quickly. The situation is volatile." Nodding, Bruce stepped forward, his voice amplified by hidden speakers. "People of Norcadia," he began, the alien words feeling strange on his tongue despite his diplomatic training. "I stand before you today, not just as your king, but as a bridge between our two species." The crowd's agitation seemed to subside slightly, replaced by a tense curiosity. Bruce pressed on, his words carefully chosen. "I propose a public ceremony to be held here in this very courtyard, where I will formally introduce myself and demonstrate my commitment to the Norcadian way of life." A ripple of surprise passed through the assembled Norcadians. Bruce could see tentacles twitching in what he hoped was a sign of interest rather than aggression. Encouraged, he continued, "This ceremony will showcase the best of both human and Norcadian customs. Together, we will forge a new path forward, one that honors your traditions while embracing the opportunities our alliance brings." As Bruce concluded his impromptu speech, he noticed a shift in the crowd's demeanor. The open hostility had largely dissipated, replaced by a cautious optimism. He allowed himself a small smile as he retreated from the balcony, already mentally preparing for the challenges ahead. The following hours were a whirlwind of activity as Bruce and his newly appointed staff scrambled to organize the ceremony. The palace buzzed with a mix of excitement and apprehension, the Norcadian servants struggling to accommodate their human king's needs. In the royal kitchens, Bruce found himself face-to-face with his first major cultural hurdle. The head chef, a Norcadian with deep blue tentacles, proudly presented him with a platter of writhing, bioluminescent creatures. "Your Majesty's traditional first meal as king," the chef announced, his translator conveying a note of pride. Bruce stared at the squirming mass, fighting to keep his composure. I appreciate the gesture," he managed, "but I'm afraid human digestive systems aren't quite equipped for live food." The chef's tentacles drooped in disappointment. Bruce, thinking quickly, added, "Perhaps we could find a way to combine Norcadian and human cuisine? I'd like to request that my personal chef from Earth be brought here to collaborate with your team." The Norcadian chef's eyes lit up at the prospect of learning new culinary techniques. "A fusion of our cuisines? Yes, Your Majesty, we shall make it so." As Bruce left the kitchens, he was approached by a nervous-looking attendant. "Your Majesty, Princess Janus requests a private audience with you in the royal gardens." Bruce nodded, both anticipation and anxiety fluttering in his stomach, as he made his way to the gardens. He found Janus waiting for him in a secluded alcove, surrounded by strange, undulating plants that seemed to pulse with an inner light. "You wish to see me, Princess?" Bruce asked, bowing slightly. Janus's tentacles curled and uncurled as she regarded him. "Yes, Your Majesty. I find myself curious about human physiology. Our conversation last night left me with many questions." Bruce smiled, relieved to see that Janus's fear had given way to scientific interest. "Of course. What would you like to know?" Over the next hour, Bruce patiently answered Janus's questions about human biology, occasionally demonstrating various features of his anatomy. Janus marveled at his hair, running a tentacle through it with surprising gentleness. "And these?" she asked, pointing to his fingernails. They're called nails, Bruce explained, holding out his hand. They protect the tips of our fingers and toes. Janice cautiously took his hand in her tentacle, examining the nails closely. Her touch sent an involuntary shiver through Bruce, which didn't go unnoticed by the princess. You react to my touch, she observed, her eyes widening with interest. Is this part of human mating behavior? Bruce felt his cheeks flush. Well, physical touch can be part of human courtship, yes, but it's also just a normal response to any kind of physical contact. Janice seemed fascinated by this concept, her initial apprehension about human mating methods giving way to curiosity. As their conversation continued, Bruce found himself warming to the princess, appreciating her inquisitive nature and quick intelligence. Their meeting was interrupted by the arrival of Elder Zixtel, who informed Bruce that the preparations for the ceremony were nearly complete. As Bruce made his way back to his chambers to dress, he was unaware of the political machinations unfolding elsewhere in the palace. In a dimly lit chamber, Lord Xylox addressed a group of Norcadian nobles, his tentacles gesticulating wildly. This human king is an abomination, he hissed. How can we accept a ruler who cannot even produce an heir with our princess? The nobles murmured in agreement, their own tentacles twitching with agitation. Xylox pressed his advantage, spreading rumors of Bruce's biological incompatibility with Janus, and questioning the wisdom of the late king's decision. As the time for the ceremony approached, Bruce stood before a mirror, adjusting the combination of Norcadian robes and human military uniform he had chosen to wear. The fusion of styles felt symbolic of the bridge he was trying to build between their two species. Taking a deep breath, Bruce stepped out into the grand courtyard. Thousands of Norcadian citizens had gathered, their many eyes fixed upon him as he took his place on the raised platform. Princess Janus stood beside him, her tentacles intertwined nervously. As Bruce began his address, he was acutely aware of the weight of the moment. The future of two species hung in the balance, and every word he spoke could tip the scales. Little did he know that the true test of his reign was about to begin, as Lord Xylox's supporters prepared to make their move. Move! Bruce's eyes scanned the crowd, searching for any signs of unrest. Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the back of the courtyard. A group of Norcadians unfurled a banner bearing the words, "No Human King," in both Earth Standard and Norcadian script. Before Bruce could react, Elder Zixtal stepped forward, his voice amplified by hidden speakers. People of Norcadia, the elder intoned, his tentacles weaving intricate patterns in the air. Our new king has proposed a bold demonstration of his commitment to our ways. In 3 days' time, King Bruce and Princess Janus will undergo a public compatibility test, showcasing the potential for unity between our species. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Bruce felt his heart race as he processed the elder's words. He hadn't planned on announcing the test so soon, but he recognized the political savvy in Zixtal's move. It would force his opponents to show their hand early. As the crowd buzzed with excitement and apprehension, Bruce stepped forward. This test will be conducted with the utmost respect for Norcadian traditions, he announced, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. Together, we will forge a path towards a shared future. The next 3 days passed in a whirlwind of activity. The royal palace transformed into a hive of scientific inquiry as human and Norcadian experts arrived. Dr. Elena Kovacs, a renowned xenobiologist from Earth, set up her equipment in one wing of the palace, while Dr. Zilfon, a respected Norcadian reproductive specialist, occupied another. Bruce found himself pulled in multiple directions. The High Council demanded daily briefings on the test preparations, leaving him little time to process the magnitude of what he'd agreed to. Lord Xylox's whisper campaign continued, with rumors of Bruce's biological incompatibility spreading through the noble houses like wildfire. To counter the growing unrest, Bruce initiated a series of public appearances with Princess Janus. They visited Norcadian industrial centers and cultural landmarks, presenting a united front to the empire. During these outings, Bruce noticed a change in Janus's demeanor. Her initial hesitance gave way to genuine curiosity about human customs. At a bustling spaceport on the outskirts of the capital, Janus observed a human couple saying goodbye. The man pulled the woman into a tight embrace, their arms wrapped around each other. Janus turned to Bruce, her eyes wide with fascination. "What are they doing?" she asked, her translator conveying a mix of curiosity and confusion. Bruce smiled. "It's called a hug. It's a way humans show affection or comfort each other." Janus considered this for a moment, then slowly extended her tentacles towards Bruce. "May we try?" Aware of the hundreds of eyes watching them, Bruce nodded and stepped closer. Janus gently wrapped her tentacles around him, mimicking the human embrace she'd witnessed. A collective gasp rose from the Norcadian onlookers, followed by a burst of excited chatter. As they separated, Bruce noticed a faint luminescence beneath Janus's skin. She quickly composed herself, but not before several nearby Norcadians had seen the telltale glow. News of the royal hug spread rapidly across the empire, sparking heated debates about the appropriate boundaries between their species. Back at the palace, Bruce found himself thrust into intensive coaching sessions with Dr. Zilphon. The Norcadian specialist attempted to teach him the intricate tentacle movements essential to their mating rituals. Bruce's human physiology proved a significant obstacle, leading to moments of frustration for both teacher and student. "No, Your Majesty," Dr. Zilphon sighed, his tentacles drooping in exasperation. "The third tentacle must weave counterclockwise while the others maintain a Fibonacci spiral." Bruce ran a hand through his hair, equally frustrated. "I'm trying, Doctor, but I'm working with significantly fewer appendages here." As they struggled to find common ground, Dr. Kovacs approached with a suggestion. "Perhaps we could develop alternative methods that incorporate elements of both species' practices?" The idea sparked a flurry of collaborative efforts between the human and Norcadian scientific teams. They worked tirelessly to create a hybrid protocol that would satisfy both biological and cultural requirements. Meanwhile, Princess Janus underwent her own educational process with Dr. Kovacs. The xenobiologist patiently explained human mating practices, using diagrams and holographic models to illustrate key concepts. Janus recoiled at first when shown images of humans kissing. "They press their food intake orifices together?" she asked, her tentacles curling in discomfort. Dr. Kovacs nodded. "It's a common expression of affection and desire among humans. The lips are highly sensitive, making the act pleasurable for both parties." As the lessons progressed, Janus's initial revulsion gave way to a grudging curiosity. She found herself wondering what it might feel like to experience such intimate contact. One evening, as Bruce and Janus took a walk through the palace gardens to escape the constant scrutiny of their advisors, the princess broached the subject. "Bruce," she began, her translator struggling to convey the mix of embarrassment and curiosity in her voice, "would you show me how humans kiss?" Bruce felt his pulse quicken. He glanced around, ensuring they were alone in the secluded alcove surrounded by bioluminescent flora. "Are you sure?" he asked gently. Janus nodded, her tentacles twisting nervously. Bruce stepped closer, cupping her face gently with his hands. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, then pressed his lips softly against hers. To their mutual surprise, Janus's skin began to emit a soft, pulsing glow. The light intensified as the kiss deepened, casting shimmering patterns on the surrounding foliage. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily, equally affected by the unexpected intensity of the moment. Unbeknownst to the couple, a pair of eyes watched from the shadows. Lord Xylox's spy recorded the entire encounter, transmitting the data back to his master. In his dimly lit chambers, Xylox watched the footage with a mixture of disgust and triumph. "At last," he hissed, his tentacles writhing with malicious glee. "We have the evidence we need to expose this human usurper for the deviant he truly is." As Xylox began formulating his plan to disrupt the public compatibility test, Bruce received an encrypted message from Earth. The contents made his blood run cold. An assassination plot, orchestrated by unknown elements within the Galactic Council, threatened not just his reign, but his life. With the weight of two worlds on his shoulders and threats closing in from all sides, Bruce steeled himself for the challenge ahead. The compatibility test loomed on the horizon, promising to be far more than a mere scientific demonstration. It would be a crucible, one that would test not just his biological compatibility with Janus, but his ability to navigate the treacherous waters of interstellar politics. As the first light of dawn broke over the Norcadian capital, Bruce stood at the window of his chambers, watching the city come to life. The day of reckoning had arrived, and he knew that the next few hours would determine not just his fate, but the future of human-Norcadian relations for generations to come. Come. The first rays of sunlight pierced through the ornate windows of Bruce's chambers, casting long shadows across the room. He turned from the window, his gaze falling on the elaborate Norcadian robes laid out for the day's events. With a deep breath, he began to dress, each movement deliberate and measured. In her own chambers, Princess Janice was going through a similar ritual. Her tentacles wove intricate patterns as she adorned herself with bioluminescent jewelry, the soft glow pulsing in time with her nervous heartbeat. The memory of her kiss with Bruce lingered, both thrilling and unsettling her. As they made their way to the grand hall, Bruce and Janice walked side by side, their steps perfectly in sync. The corridors were unusually quiet, the typical bustle of palace life replaced by an anticipatory hush. When they reached the massive doors leading to the hall, they paused, exchanging a glance that spoke volumes. Without a word, Bruce extended his hand, and Janice wrapped a tentacle around it, drawing strength from the contact. The doors swung open, revealing a scene that took their breath away. The grand hall, once a symbol of Norcadian opulence, had been transformed into a state-of-the-art scientific arena. Sleek Earth technology meshed seamlessly with the organic curves of Norcadian design. At the center stood a transparent chamber, its surface shimmering with an iridescent sheen. Dr. Elena Kovacs approached the royal couple, her usual lab coat replaced by formal attire befitting the occasion. "Your Majesties," she said, her voice low and steady, "we're ready to begin whenever you are." Dr. Zilfon glided forward, his tentacles curled in a gesture of respect. "The procedure will be gradual," he explained, his translator conveying a mix of professional detachment and underlying excitement. "We'll start with basic physical contact and progress from there, monitoring your physiological responses throughout." Bruce nodded, his military training helping him maintain a calm exterior despite the butterflies in his stomach. "Let's do this," he said, giving Janice's tentacle a gentle squeeze. They entered the chamber, the door sealing behind them with a soft hiss. The air inside was perfectly regulated, carrying a faint, pleasant scent designed to put them at ease. As they took their positions, Bruce became acutely aware of the hundreds of eyes watching them from the surrounding galleries. He spotted members of the High Council, their expressions unreadable. Alien diplomats from across the galaxy leaned forward in their seats, eager to witness this unprecedented event. Lord Xylox sat in a prominent position, his tentacles twitching with barely concealed agitation. His eyes bored into Bruce, filled with a hatred that sent a chill down the human king's spine. Dr. Kovacs's voice came through hidden speakers, guiding them through the first step. "Please join hands," she instructed. Bruce extended his hand, and Janice wrapped her tentacle around it. The contact sent a tingling sensation up Bruce's arm, and he noticed a faint glow emanating from Janice's skin. Large screens around the hall lit up, displaying a dizzying array of biological data. A murmur rippled through the audience as the readings showed a significant spike in pleasurable hormones for both participants. Even Dr. Zilfon's tentacles curled in surprise at the unexpected compatibility. Encouraged by this positive start, Dr. Kovacs continued, "Now, Your Majesties, please proceed with a human-style embrace." Bruce gently pulled Janice closer, wrapping his arms around her in a tender hug. The princess hesitated for a moment before relaxing into the embrace, her tentacles curling around Bruce's back. As they held each other, Janice's bioluminescence intensified, bathing the chamber in a soft, pulsating glow. Gasps of awe echoed through the grand hall. Many of the Norcadians had never seen such a vivid display from one of their own kind. The data screens showed an even more dramatic spike in positive physiological responses. As Bruce and Janice separated, their eyes met, a new understanding passing between them. But before they could process the moment, chaos erupted. A group of masked figures burst into the hall, energy weapons raised. "Death to the human usurper!" one of them shouted, his voice distorted by a vocal modulator. In an instant, the grand hall descended into pandemonium. Diplomats ducked for cover, counselors fled their seats, and security personnel scrambled to respond. Bruce's military instincts kicked in immediately. He assessed the situation, quickly realizing they were trapped in the sealed chamber. "Janice," he said urgently, "I need your help. Can you interface with the chamber's systems?" The princess nodded, her earlier nervousness replaced by steely purpose. She pressed her tentacles against a control panel, interfacing directly with the technology. Bruce guided her through the process of accessing the palace's security systems, his knowledge of Earth tech complementing her innate understanding of Norcadian interfaces. Working together, they managed to seal off the Grand Hall, trapping the insurgents inside. Bruce then turned his attention to the panicked crowd, using the chamber's communication system to issue calm, clear instructions to the security forces. To Bruce's amazement, Janice suddenly sprang into action. With a grace he'd never seen before, she used her tentacles to disarm several attackers who had gotten too close to the chamber. Her movements were fluid and precise, a deadly dance that left the insurgents sprawling on the floor. As the palace guards regained control of the situation, Bruce noticed a familiar figure trying to slip away unnoticed. Lord Xylox, his earlier disdain replaced by naked fear, was making his way towards a concealed exit. "Ambassador Warren," Bruce called out, spotting the human diplomat and her security team. "Lord Xylox is escaping. He's behind this." Sarah Warren, her face set in iron will, nodded and sprinted after the fleeing Norcadian, her team close behind. With the immediate threat contained and Xylox's treachery exposed, Bruce and Janice emerged from the chamber to a very different scene than the one they'd entered. The Grand Hall bore the scars of the brief but intense conflict, but the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Members of the High Council approached, their earlier skepticism replaced by newfound respect. "Your Majesties," the eldest among them said, his tentacles forming a gesture of deep admiration, "your actions today have proven beyond doubt your fitness to rule. The compatibility test, though interrupted, has shown us more than we could have hoped." Dr. Kovacs and Dr. Zilfon hurried over, their faces alight with excitement. "Your Majesties," Dr. Kovacs began, her voice trembling slightly, "the data we collected, though limited, is extraordinary. Your physiological responses indicate an unprecedented level of compatibility." Dr. Zilfon picked up where she left off, his tentacles weaving excitedly. "With further research, we believe that procreation between your species might indeed be possible. The implications are staggering." A hush fell over the hall as the impact of this announcement sank in. The possibility of a human Norcadian heir had suddenly become a tangible reality, reshaping the political landscape in an instant. As the day's events wound down, Bruce and Janice found themselves standing before their subjects, no longer as reluctant partners, but as a united front. The failed coup and their seamless cooperation had forged a bond between them that transcended their biological differences. Later, as they retired to the royal chambers, exhaustion and exhilaration warred within them. Bruce sank into a chair, running a hand through his hair. "Well," he said with a wry smile, "that wasn't quite the compatibility test I was expecting." Janice's skin shimmered with a soft glow as she settled beside him. "Perhaps it was a better test than the one they had planned," she replied, her translator conveying a mix of amusement and warmth. As they sat in comfortable silence, neither was aware of the ripples their actions had sent across the galaxy. In distant star systems, news of the day's events was already spreading, captivating the imaginations of billions and setting in motion forces that would shape the future of interstellar relations. In the shadows of the Galactic Council's chambers, figures huddled in urgent conversation, their voices low and concerned. The potential of a human Norcadian alliance had shifted the delicate balance of power, and plans were already being set in motion to address this new reality. Back in the Norcadian palace, Bruce and Janice drifted off to sleep, unaware of the gathering storm on the horizon. Their journey had only just begun, and the true test of their relationship, in Bruce's reign, was yet to come. As the first light of dawn broke over the Norcadian capital, Bruce awoke to find Princess Janice already stirring beside him. The events of the previous day had forged a new bond between them, one that transcended their biological differences. "Good morning," Bruce said softly, his voice still husky from sleep. Janice's skin rippled with a gentle bioluminescence, her tentacles unfurling in a graceful stretch. "Good morning, Bruce," she replied through her translator, the synthetic voice tinged with warmth. Their moment of peace was short-lived. A sharp knock at the door preceded the entrance of Dr. Elena Kovacs and Dr. Zilfon, both practically vibrating with excitement. "Your Majesties," Dr. Kovacs began, her eyes alight with scientific fervor. "We've analyzed the data from yesterday's interrupted test. The results are extraordinary." Dr. Zilfon's tentacles waved in agreement. "We believe further, more intimate tests could yield groundbreaking results, perhaps even pave the way for human Norcadian reproduction." Bruce and Janus exchanged a look, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension passing between them. After a moment's hesitation, Janus nodded. "We are willing to participate," she said, her translator conveying a hint of nervousness. Over the next few days, Bruce and Janus found themselves in a whirlwind of scientific exploration and political maneuvering. As they progressed through increasingly intimate physical interactions, Janus's initial trepidation about human mating practices began to fade, replaced by a growing fascination. During one such session, as Bruce's fingers intertwined with Janus's tentacles, the princess let out a soft gasp. Her skin erupted in a dazzling display of bioluminescence, pulsing in time with Bruce's heartbeat. "Remarkable," Dr. Kovacs murmured, her eyes glued to the readouts. "Their physiological responses are perfectly synchronized." As news of their compatibility spread, the political landscape shifted dramatically. The Norcadian High Council, once skeptical of Bruce's rule, now threw their full support behind the royal couple. Their newfound enthusiasm manifested in the arrangement of a traditional Norcadian fertility ritual. Bruce found himself standing at the edge of a vast pool filled with gently glowing algae, the bioluminescent organisms casting an ethereal light across the cavernous chamber. Janice glided into the pool, her tentacles trailing gracefully behind her. "Join me," she beckoned, her translator unable to fully capture the depth of emotion in her alien voice. As Bruce slipped into the warm, luminous water, something extraordinary happened. His skin began to glow, mirroring the bioluminescent patterns rippling across Janus's body. The assembled Norcadian priests gasped in awe, interpreting this as a powerful sign of their union's cosmic significance. However, not everyone viewed these developments with joy. As Bruce and Janus emerged from the pool still aglow, a palace aide rushed in with urgent news. "Your Majesties," the aide panted, "there are protests in the capital. A group calling themselves the Tentacle Supremacists. They're denouncing the idea of a hybrid heir." Bruce's military instincts kicked in immediately. "Increase security around the palace and research facilities," he ordered, "and get me a direct line to Earth. We need to be prepared for any eventuality." As if in response to his concerns, a delegation from the Galactic Council arrived the next day, led by Ambassador Zorth, a stern-faced Kraxan diplomat. The ambassador's arrival coincided with that of Dr. Marcus Warren, a renowned xenogeneticist from Earth, and brother to Ambassador Sarah Warren. Bruce observed the two delegations warily as they were shown into the palace's grand reception hall. The tension in the air was palpable, with Ambassador Zorth's cold gaze fixed on Bruce and Janus, while Dr. Warren's eyes gleamed with barely suppressed scientific curiosity. "Your Majesty," Ambassador Zorth began, his voice a low rumble, "the Galactic Council has concerns about the unprecedented nature of your union." Before Bruce could respond, Dr. Warren stepped forward. "If I may, Your Majesty," he interjected, "the potential for human Norcadian reproduction is a scientific frontier we've only dreamed of. The implications for interspecies relations are enormous." As the two groups argued, Bruce felt Janus's tentacle wrap around his hand, squeezing gently. He looked at her, seeing his own purpose reflected in her alien eyes. In that moment, he knew they were united, regardless of the challenges they faced. Their drive was tested sooner than expected. That night, as Bruce pored over security reports, an alarm blared through the palace. The tentacle supremacists had struck, targeting research facilities across the empire. Bruce sprang into action, coordinating the response with a mix of human and Norcadian guards he'd personally trained. As he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that these attacks were just the beginning. His suspicions were confirmed the next day when Ambassador Zorth requested a private audience. The Kraxan diplomat's demeanor had changed, his earlier diplomatic facade replaced by barely veiled hostility. "King Bruce," Zorth said, his voice low and menacing, "the Galactic Council strongly advises you to abandon this hybrid air project. Failure to comply will result in severe economic and political consequences for Norcadia." Bruce stood his ground, meeting the ambassador's gaze steadily. "The potential benefits of human Norcadian cooperation far outweigh any short-term difficulties," he replied firmly. "We will not be intimidated." As Zorth stormed out, Bruce turned to find Janus watching him from the doorway. Without a word, she glided to his side, her tentacles intertwining with his fingers. "We must address our people," she said, her translator conveying a mix of dedication and apprehension. Bruce nodded, squeezing her tentacle gently. Together they made their way to the palace balcony overlooking the capital. A sea of faces, both human and Norcadian, looked up at them expectantly. Taking a deep breath, Bruce began to speak. "People of Norcadia, both human and native, we stand at a crossroads in our shared history." As Bruce's words rang out across the square, neither he nor Janus noticed the shimmer of a cloaked figure moving through the crowd, its alien eyes fixed on the royal couple with deadly intent. In that moment, a series of explosions rocked the palace, shattering the relative calm that had settled over the capital. Bruce's instincts kicked in immediately. He grabbed Janus and pulled her away from the balcony, just as a volley of energy blasts scorched the spot where they had been standing. The crowd below erupted into panic, scattering in all directions as cloaked figures materialized throughout the square. "Tentacle supremacists?" Janus hissed, her skin flashing with patterns of alarm. Bruce nodded grimly. "They're making their move. We need to get to the command center." As they rushed through the palace corridors, Bruce's mind raced. The attacks on the research facilities had been a prelude to this full-scale assault. He should have seen it coming. The palace guards were already mobilizing, but the insurgents' cloaking technology gave them a significant advantage. Bruce watched in horror as a group of Norcadian soldiers was ambushed by attackers that seemed to appear out of thin air. "Janus," Bruce said, an idea forming. "You know the secret passages in the palace, right?" The princess nodded, her tentacles curling with understanding. "I can guide our forces through them. The supremacists won't expect it." Bruce squeezed her hand. "Perfect. I'll coordinate the defense from the command center. Be safe." As Janus slipped away into a hidden entrance, Bruce rallied his specially trained human Norcadian security team. "Listen up," he barked. "We're facing an enemy with advanced cloaking tech. Use infrared sensors and stay in constant communication. No one fights alone." The team fanned out through the palace, their hybrid training allowing them to anticipate and counter the supremacists' tactics. Bruce made his way to the command center, narrowly avoiding several firefights along the way. Inside the fortified room, he found Dr. Elena Kovacs and Dr. Zilfon frantically working at a bank of computers. "Your Majesty," Dr. Kovacs said, her voice tight with stress, "they're after our research data. If they get their hands on it—" "They won't," Bruce assured her, even as he wondered how deep this conspiracy ran. "Keep working on securing the data. I need to coordinate our defense." As Bruce issued orders and received reports from across the palace, he noticed a disturbance in the communication system. Ambassador Zorth's face appeared on one of the screens, his expression a mask of false concern. "People of Norcadia," the Kraxan diplomat began, "it is with great regret that I must inform you." The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by the face of Ambassador Sarah Warren. "Nice try, Zorth," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "Your little coup attempt has been exposed to the Galactic Council. It's over." Bruce allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction, but it was short-lived. A proximity alarm blared, indicating that insurgents had breached the defenses near the royal chambers. "Janus," Bruce muttered, his heart racing. He sprinted from the command center, dodging energy blasts and leaping over the bodies of fallen combatants. He found Janus cornered in their chambers, surrounded by a group of tentacle supremacists. Without thinking, Bruce activated the experimental shield device Earth scientists had given him. A shimmering bubble enveloped him and Janus, deflecting the insurgents' attacks. But something unexpected happened. The unstable energy field began to pulse, sending out waves that seemed to resonate with Janus's biology. Her skin erupted in a dazzling display of bioluminescence, pulsing in perfect sync with Bruce's heartbeat. The supremacists recoiled, momentarily blinded and disoriented by the intense light. Bruce seized the opportunity, drawing his weapon and incapacitating the attackers with precise shots. "Bruce!" Janus gasped, her translator barely able to convey her awe. "What's happening to us?" Before he could answer, they heard shouts from the corridor. More insurgents were coming. Hand in hand, their bodies still pulsing with shared light, Bruce and Janus ran. As they fought their way through the palace, Bruce noticed a change in the Norcadian soldiers they encountered. The sight of their king and princess, literally glowing with compatibility, seemed to inspire them. Many who had been hesitating now threw themselves into the fight with renewed vigor. They reached a grand hall where a fierce battle was raging. Lady Zelina, leading a group of moderate nobles, had just arrived with reinforcements. Her eyes widened at the sight of Bruce and Janus. "The prophecy," she whispered, her tentacles forming a gesture of reverence. "The union of two worlds, shining as one." With the tide of battle turning, Bruce's communicator crackled to life. It was Dr. Marcus Warren, his voice filled with excitement. "Your Majesty," the xenogeneticist said, "the energy from your shield device has triggered a unique reaction in Princess Janus's reproductive system. It's increasing compatibility, but the effect is temporary. If you want to attempt conception, it needs to be soon." Bruce and Janus exchanged a look, 1,000 words passing between them without need for translation. They had discussed this possibility, but now, in the midst of chaos and violence, the decision carried even greater weight. "We need to end this quickly," Bruce said, his voice filled with new persistence, "for the future of both our peoples." As the last of the insurgents were rounded up, Bruce and Janus made their way to a secure chamber deep within the palace. Dr. Kovacs and Dr. Zilfon were waiting for them, their equipment ready. "We'll monitor your condition," Dr. Kovacs explained, her professional demeanor barely concealing her excitement. "But ultimately, this is up to you two." As the door closed behind them, Bruce took Janus's hands in his own. Their shared bioluminescence had faded, but he could still feel the connection between them, stronger than ever. "Whatever happens," he said softly, "we face it together." Janus's tentacles curled around his fingers, her alien eyes filled with an emotion that needed no translation. As they came together, the future of two species hung in the balance, a new chapter in galactic history about to be written. Outside the chamber, as news of the foiled coup spread across the empire, the political landscape began to shift. But in the outer colonies, where tentacle supremacist ideology had taken root, new storms were brewing. And in the halls of the Galactic Council, the exposure of Ambassador Zorth's treachery had sparked a crisis that threatened to redraw the map of galactic power. For Bruce and Janus, however, those challenges were for tomorrow. Tonight they focused only on each other, and the possibility of a future neither of them had ever imagined. Dared imagine. The hours that followed were a blur of intense emotions and careful medical procedures. Dr. Kovacs and Dr. Zilfon worked tirelessly, monitoring every aspect of the conception process. Bruce and Janus remained in the secure chamber, their bodies still resonating with the lingering effects of the shield device. As dawn broke over the capital, Dr. Kovacs burst into the room, her face alight with excitement. "Your Majesties," she announced, her voice trembling, "I have incredible news. The conception was successful. Princess Janus is pregnant with a viable hybrid embryo." The words hung in the air for a moment, their weight almost tangible. Bruce felt a surge of emotions, joy, fear, wonder, all competing for dominance. He looked at Janus, her alien features arranged in an expression he had learned to read as awe. "We did it," he whispered, squeezing her tentacle gently. Janice's skin rippled with patterns of blue and gold, her own version of joyful tears. "A child of two worlds," she said, her translator struggling to convey the depth of her emotions. The news spread rapidly, first through the palace, then across the capital, and soon to the farthest reaches of the Norcadian Empire. The reaction was immediate and polarizing. In the streets of the capital, humans and Norcadians alike erupted into spontaneous celebration. Holographic displays showed crowds dancing, their bodies intertwining in a physical representation of the union their rulers had achieved. But in the outer colonies, a different scene unfolded. Tentacle supremacist groups, emboldened by their near success in the palace attack, intensified their protests. Reports flooded in of sabotaged infrastructure and violent clashes between supremacists and integrationists. Bruce watched the reports with a mixture of pride and concern. He turned to Lady Xylena, who had proven her loyalty during the recent attack. "We need to get ahead of this," he said. "The supremacists will use every trick to turn public opinion against us." Xylena nodded, her tentacles forming a gesture of agreement. "I have an idea, Your Majesty. Let me gather a team of moderate nobles. We can start an information campaign, showcasing the benefits of human-Norcadian cooperation." As Xylena set to work, Bruce received an urgent communication from the Galactic Council. The holographic image of the council chamber appeared before him, filled with the diverse forms of representatives from across the galaxy. The exposed treachery of Ambassador Zorth had thrown the council into disarray, and now they grappled with the implications of the human Norcadian heir. "King Bruce," the Arcturian representative began, her crystalline form shimmering with agitation, "the council demands an explanation for this unprecedented biological experiment. The potential disruption to the galactic order cannot be overstated." Before Bruce could respond, another voice cut in. It was Ambassador Sarah Warren, her holographic form standing tall and defiant. "With all due respect," she said, her voice sharp, "the Norcadian Empire's internal affairs are not subject to council approval. This union represents a new era of interspecies cooperation, one that could benefit us all." The council chamber erupted into heated debate. Bruce watched as alliances shifted in real time, with a coalition of moderate species blocking attempts to impose sanctions on Norcadia. As the political storm raged, Bruce turned his attention to more immediate concerns. Dr. Kovacs approached him, her face a mixture of excitement and worry. "Your Majesty," she said, "we've made some startling discoveries about the princess's pregnancy. The hybrid embryo is developing at an accelerated rate. We estimate the gestation period will be significantly shorter than either human or Norcadian norms." Bruce felt a flutter of anxiety. "Is Janice in any danger?" Dr. Kovacs shook her head. "Not as far as we can tell. In fact, the fetus is showing remarkable adaptability. It's combining traits from both species in ways we never imagined possible. But we'll need to monitor the situation closely." Over the following weeks, Bruce found himself pulled in countless directions. He implemented a series of reforms aimed at integrating human and Norcadian cultures, establishing joint scientific research programs, and cultural exchange initiatives. Each day brought new challenges, from quelling supremacist uprisings in the outer colonies to negotiating with skeptical Galactic Council members. Through it all, Janice remained a constant source of strength. Despite the accelerated pace of her pregnancy, she insisted on maintaining her royal duties. Bruce often found her in the palace gardens, her swelling form surrounded by a mix of human and Norcadian children, teaching them songs that bridged their cultural divide. As Janice entered the final stages of her pregnancy, tension in the Empire reached a boiling point. Intelligence reports indicated that the tentacle supremacists were planning a major offensive, backed by shadowy figures within the Galactic Council. Bruce stood on the palace balcony, surveying the capital city. The skyline was a blend of Norcadian organic architecture and human technological marvels, a visual representation of their united future. He activated his comm link, connecting to his security chief. "Double the patrols in the outer districts," he ordered, "and increase surveillance on known supremacist sympathizers. They're planning something big, and we need to be ready." As he turned to head back inside, a sharp cry echoed through the palace. Bruce's heart leapt into his throat. He knew that sound, even through the distortion of Janus's translator. "The baby," he whispered, breaking into a run. He burst into their chambers to find Janus surrounded by medical staff. Dr. Kovacs looked up, her face pale. "It's happening, Your Majesty. The heir is coming. Weeks early." Outside, alarms began to blare. The tentacle supremacists had launched their attack, targeting major Norcadian cities in a coordinated assault. As the first explosions rocked the capital, Bruce found himself torn between his duty as king and his role as an expectant father. He looked at Janus, her alien eyes filled with a mix of pain and grit. In that moment, he knew that the next few hours would determine not just their fate, but the future of interspecies relations across the galaxy. The human Norcadian heir was about to enter a world on the brink of chaos, and Bruce had to ensure that world was ready for the change it would bring. As the first explosions rocked the capital, Bruce found himself torn between his duty as king and his role as an expectant father. He looked at Janus, her alien eyes filled with a mix of pain and commitment. In that moment, he knew that the next few hours would determine not just their fate, but the future of interspecies relations across the galaxy. "Your Majesty," Dr. Kovacs said urgently, "we need to move the princess to the secure medical facility immediately." Bruce nodded, helping Janus to her feet. As they made their way through the palace corridors, the building shook with another explosion. Alarms blared, and the sound of weapons fire echoed in the distance. "Status report," Bruce barked into his comlink. Lady Xylena's voice crackled through. "Tentacle supremacists have launched a coordinated attack on major cities. They're using advanced weaponry we've never seen before. I'm mobilizing our forces for a counteroffensive." "Understood. I'm activating the United Earth Government fleet. We can't let them gain control of our orbital defenses." As they reached the medical facility, Bruce kissed Janus's forehead. "I have to coordinate our defenses. I'll be back as soon as I can." Janus's tentacles curled around his hand. "Go. Protect our people. Both of them." Bruce sprinted to the command center, issuing rapid-fire orders. Holographic displays showed the battle unfolding across the planet and in orbit. The UEG fleet engaged the insurgent ships, preventing them from seizing control of the defense grid. On the ground, Lady Xylena's troops pushed back against the supremacists. Bruce watched with pride as human and Norcadian soldiers fought side by side, their different physiologies and combat styles complementing each other perfectly. A lieutenant approached Bruce. "Your Majesty, we're detecting energy fluctuations from the medical facility." Bruce's heart raced as he rushed back to Janus. The scene that greeted him was breathtaking. Janus's body pulsed with intense bioluminescence, bathing the room in undulating waves of light. Dr. Kovacs and Dr. Zilfon worked frantically, their equipment sparking and failing under the onslaught of energy. "What's happening?" Bruce demanded. Dr. Zilfon's tentacles fluttered nervously. "The hybrid physiology is causing unforeseen complications. We're having to improvise new procedures on the spot." Bruce moved to Janus's side, taking her hand. Her skin was hot to the touch, the bioluminescence pulsing in time with her accelerated heartbeat. Suddenly the lights flickered and died. The medical equipment went dark, leaving only Janus's glow to illuminate the room. "Power grid's down," Dr. Kovacs said, her voice tense. "We need to stabilize her condition, but without our equipment—" Bruce's mind raced. He unclipped his personal shield device from his belt, activating it. The energy field sprang to life, interacting with Janus's bioluminescence to create a stable, pulsating glow. "Use this," he said. "It should power the critical systems." As the doctors worked, Bruce's comm link crackled. "Your Majesty," Lady Xylena's voice came through. "We've pushed them back from the city center, but a group has breached the palace defenses. They're heading your way." Bruce looked at Janus, torn. She met his gaze and nodded slightly. "Go," she whispered through gritted teeth. With a heavy heart, Bruce left the birthing chamber. In the corridor outside, he encountered the first wave of tentacle supremacists. Their multiple limbs lashed out, wielding energy weapons and hand-to-hand combat appendages. Bruce's human agility served him well as he ducked and weaved through the assault. His combat training kicked in, allowing him to exploit the weak points in Norcadian physiology. He disabled 2 attackers with precise strikes to their nerve clusters, then used their unconscious forms as a shield against energy blasts from their comrades. As the fight intensified, Bruce's shield device began to overload. Pulses of energy radiated from it, disrupting the supremacists' weapons. Bruce pressed his advantage, closing in for hand-to-tentacle combat with the insurgent leader. They grappled fiercely, Bruce's 2 arms against the Norcadian's 8 tentacles. Just as the supremacist leader began to overpower him, a blinding flash of light erupted from the birthing chamber. A wave of energy washed over them, temporarily disabling the supremacist's weapons and cloaking devices. In the moment of confusion, Bruce subdued the insurgent leader. As he secured his prisoner, a piercing cry echoed from the medical facility. Bruce's heart leapt. He raced back to the birthing chamber, bursting through the doors. There in Janus's arms lay their child. The infant was a perfect blend of human and Norcadian features. Small tentacles framing a human face, skin that shimmered with a soft bioluminescent glow. As Bruce approached, the child's eyes opened, revealing irises that swirled with colors he had never seen before. Is everything okay?" Bruce asked, his voice choked with emotion. Dr. Kovacs nodded, her face beaming. "Mother and child are both healthy. It's a miracle, really. The hybrid physiology is unlike anything we've ever seen." As Bruce cradled his newborn child, reports flooded in from across the Empire. The tentacle supremacist forces, demoralized by their failure and the news of the hybrid heir's birth, were surrendering en masse. Lady Xylena's troops had secured the capital, and the UEG fleet had neutralized the remaining resistance in orbit. "We did it," Bruce said softly to Janus. "Both the battle and this." He gestured to their child, who cooed softly, tiny tentacles curling around his finger. Janus's skin rippled with patterns of joy and exhaustion. "What shall we name our little one?" Before Bruce could answer, his comlink chimed. It was Ambassador Warren. "Your Majesty, the Galactic Council is demanding an immediate audience. The exposure of their members' involvement in the supremacist plot has thrown interstellar politics into chaos." Bruce looked down at his child, then at Janus. The future stretched before them, full of new challenges and opportunities. The hybrid infant in his arms represented not just their love, but the potential for a new era of interspecies cooperation. "Tell them we'll be there shortly," Bruce said. "It's time to introduce our child to the galaxy." "Galaxy." Bruce's voice was firm, his gaze fixed on the tiny being in his arms. "This child represents a new dawn for us all." As the dust settled from the tentacle supremacist attack, Bruce and Janus named their child Nova. The name seemed fitting for a being who had entered the world in a flash of light and energy, heralding a new era for both their species. In the months that followed, Bruce and Janus found themselves navigating not only the complexities of new parenthood, but also the turbulent waters of post-conflict politics. The Norcadian Empire, still reeling from the supremacist assault, required careful stewardship to heal the rifts between factions and rebuild damaged infrastructure. Bruce spent long hours in strategy meetings with Lady Xylena and his human advisors, working to integrate the best of both cultures into a cohesive governing system. Janus, meanwhile, focused on social reforms, using her unique perspective as both royalty and a former outcast to bridge divides within Norcadian society. Through it all, Nova grew at an astonishing rate. By 3 months, the infant was already crawling, tendrils of bioluminescent hair curling and uncurling with each movement. At 6 months, Nova spoke their first words, in both human and Norcadian languages, simultaneously. Dr. Kovacs and Dr. Zilfin worked tirelessly to document Nova's development, their research providing invaluable insights into the potential of human Norcadian genetics. "The child's neural pathways are unlike anything we've ever seen," Dr. Kovacs reported during one of their regular briefings. "Nova is processing information at a rate that outpaces both human and Norcadian norms." As Nova's first birthday approached, the child had the appearance and capabilities of a human 5-year-old. Bruce watched with a mixture of pride and trepidation as Nova manipulated complex holograms in the palace library, absorbing information at an unprecedented rate. Your Majesty, Ambassador Warren's voice interrupted Bruce's musings. The Galactic Council has called for a special session. They're requesting your presence, and that of the Princess and Nova. Bruce's eyes sharp. He knew this summons was coming, but he had hoped for more time. When? The session is scheduled to coincide with Nova's first birthday, sir. I believe they see it as symbolic. Janice entered the room, her tentacles rippling with concern. Is it wise to bring Nova before the council so soon? Our child is still so young. Bruce took Janice's hand, their fingers intertwining naturally despite their physiological differences. We don't have a choice. The galaxy is watching us, waiting to see what this union will bring. We need to show them that our family and our empire is strong. The day of the council session arrived with a palpable tension in the air. As their ship docked at the Galactic Council Station, Bruce couldn't help but remember his first, humiliating appearance in these chambers. He straightened his back, the weight of his responsibilities settling on his shoulders. Nova walked between them, small hand in Bruce's, tendrils wrapped gently around Janice's wrist. The child's skin shimmered with a soft glow, brightening as they entered the council chamber. A hush fell over the assembled delegates. Hundreds of eyes, tentacles, and sensory organs from dozens of species focused on the small family. Bruce recognized the mixture of curiosity, awe, and lingering suspicion in their gazes. As they approached the central podium, Nova's glow intensified, casting a warm light throughout the chamber. Bruce opened his mouth to address the council, but before he could speak, chaos erupted. A group of tentacle supremacists, having infiltrated the council's security detail, launched a desperate attack. Energy weapons flared to life, their beams cutting through the air towards Bruce and his family. Bruce moved instinctively to shield Janice and Nova, but to his shock, Nova stepped forward. The child raised both hands, palms outward. A shimmering field of energy burst into existence, deflecting the weapon's fire harmlessly away. With a gesture that seemed impossibly mature for their age, Nova lifted the attackers off their feet, suspending them in midair. The child's eyes glowed with an inner light, tendrils of hair floating as if in an unseen current. In the stunned silence that followed, Nova spoke. The child's voice was clear and strong, carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Why do you fight? Nova asked, addressing not just the immobilized attackers, but the entire assembly. Can you not see the strength that lies in our differences, the potential when we come together? Nova's words seemed to resonate on a frequency beyond mere sound. Bruce watched in amazement as the delegates leaned forward, captivated by his child's presence. I am both human and Norcadian, yet I am neither. I am something new, born of love and hope for a better future. Each of you carries within you the potential for change, for growth beyond the limitations of your species. As Nova spoke, images flickered to life around the chamber, holographic displays showcasing advancements in technology, medicine, and cultural exchange that had already resulted from the human-Norcadian alliance. Imagine what we could accomplish if we embraced our diversity instead of fearing it. The cosmos is vast, full of wonders we have yet to discover. Why waste our energy fighting amongst ourselves when we could be exploring the stars together? Nova lowered the attackers gently to the ground. As the child's energy field dissipated, Council security moved in to apprehend them. But the damage to their cause was already done. The chamber buzzed with excited conversation, delegates turning to their neighbors with newfound enthusiasm. The leader of the council, a wizened being from a species known for their cautious neutrality, stepped forward. Never in my long years have I witnessed such a display of wisdom and power, they said, their voice amplified throughout the chamber. I believe it is time for a vote. Bruce held his breath as the council members cast their ballots. The results appeared on the main display, a sea of green lights indicating overwhelming approval. By the power vested in me by this council, the leader intoned, I hereby formally recognize the legitimacy of King Bruce and Queen Janice's rule over the Norcadian Empire. Furthermore, we shall establish a new interspecies cooperation initiative with the Norcadian Empire and Earth as its founding members. The chamber erupted in applause. Bruce felt Janice's tentacles curl around his arm, her skin pulsing with patterns of joy and relief. Nova stood before them, no longer just their child, but a symbol of hope for the entire galaxy. As the council session concluded, Bruce knew that their journey was not nearly finished. There would be challenges ahead, opposition to overcome, and a galaxy of prejudices to dismantle. But looking at Nova, glowing with potential, and at Janus, her alien features now as dear to him as his own reflection, Bruce felt ready to face whatever the future might bring. Together they stepped off the council platform, ready to begin the next chapter of their incredible story.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.